let's try the lavalier mic. Can you hear me on this? Ah, okay, good. Thanks, Judy. I appreciate you letting me know. So, what I was saying, there's hissing, but I can't hear you. Okay. Can you hear me on the lavalier mic? On the lavalier mic? Okay. All right. I'll have to figure out what the problem is with the other ones. Thanks, Judy. Okay. This is why I have backups of backups of backups. Okay, so what I was saying is 2 weeks ago, I was telling you about all the medical appointments and stuff I was at with Scott. And so I spent a lot of time with my phone in my hand. And apparently holding my phone and playing games and doing emails and doing all that kind of stuff on my phone for several days in a row, I hurt my hand. So right through here is just killing me. And I'm finding it hard to hold and pinch for like doing any of my handwork and things like that. It was sore when I was on 2 weeks ago, but it's completely unusable. Well, not completely unusable. It is painful to use now. So I haven't done as much of my handwork as usual. Oh, I didn't introduce myself because I started talking about this. I'm sorry. Welcome to StashBlaster Quilts. I'm Maria. I'm here to help you make more quilts in less time with less stress. And here I am telling you about all my stress. But here we go. But anyway, because my hand hurts, I haven't gotten as much done as I would have liked. But today I'm going to Voltaire noise. That sounds good. I'm going to try to do a different project. That'll be one that can be just one of my continuous, up in the middle of the night kind of projects, while using up the blocks I usually make in the middle of the night kind of projects. So I'm just going to be sitting and sewing today with you, so it should be a pretty relaxed day. So we always start with the tip of the day. I don't usually start with my ailments, but there you go. So the tip for this week is time management and planning for your day, your week, your month, your year in order to make sure you get everything done that you need to accomplish. And most people don't actually know how long it takes for them to accomplish a specific task. So they're always surprised when they're done either incredibly early or it took a lot longer than they anticipated. So for example, I was trying to figure out how long it took me to sew my hexagons together for the underwater quilt and the one that I'm working on now. And so I was thinking about it, and I was, it took me X number of weeks to finish the one quilt. So that was probably this many hours. And since I kind of have a goal that I did until I was going to be making a wedding quilt. So I have no idea how long the wedding quilt's going to take. But my goal was that by the end of next year to have the grandmother's flower garden quilt done. But I wasn't calculating in the actual time it's going to take me. So when I'm doing a project, whether it's quilting or some other project, I will actually time myself doing each of the components of the project. And then what I can do is I can do the math and figure out how long the actual project took me. But also it lets me know, okay, if I can accomplish this much on a regular basis in this amount of time, I can project how long it will take me to finish. So if I'm filing paperwork, if I test it a couple of times for like 15 minutes, how much paperwork can I get through in 15 minutes? And then I say, okay, I got through about an inch in, let's say, half an hour. Then I will know if I'm looking at a stack of paper about 3 inches tall, it's going to take me about 6 hours to go through it. So I can plan, if I have a deadline, how much do I need to accomplish each week, each day, whatever. With your quilting, it's the same way. So what I did was I took a whole stack of the white arcs here. This arc here, it's five white hexagons. Actually, let me grab this one because it volunteered. These 5 white hexagons, which is 4 seams, because I sew the arc together and then I apply it to the flower. So I took the 5 hexagons, sewed them together with the 4 seams, which means I had to knot, start, sew, end, tie off each one of those. And I did 20 of the arcs with my clock running the whole time. So if I stopped to eat something, I put a pause on the timer, and then I started again when I started back up. So when I had a whole bunch of these, 20 times 4 is 80 seams, I could take the amount of time that I spent divided by the 80 and know what my average sewing time was for 1 inch of hexagons. Now, the problem is if you start at the very beginning of the project, you're going to get better at it. So you're going to pick up a little bit of speed. So it never hurts to figure the longer time frame, because then you're done early. But sometimes people wait until they're well in their groove, and then they're not counting for the fact that they're a little slower each time that they start. So every time I start to sew, the first couple are going to be slower than when I really get going. So it's good to take a nice big chunk and then average it. So, I've calculated for each of these, for both the big underwater quilt and for the grandmother's flower garden. And if I finish by the end of the year next year, especially with everything else that's going on, I will have done really well. It may be actually 2 years from now before I complete the grandmother's flower garden top. Now, it could be that I wind up doing a lot of sitting and I do a lot of hand sewing because of some other reason, and I can put in more hours than I anticipate. But since you can never be quite sure, now my expectations are more realistic. So what I'm suggesting to you is, when you have a big project, especially if it's one with a deadline, do some of the work, time it out, see how long it will take you, and then you'll be prepared to spread it out over time so that it's not as painful. And you can actually build in some extra time in case something like this happens. And so you can have an extra couple of weeks built in. So that's my tip for this time. The quilting. Let's go to camera 3. This is all I got done the last 2 weeks, which isn't bad. Remember that the goal is to make 1 arc, 1 flower, or sew the 2 together every day. And this is way more than 14 segments. So I'm feeling pretty good about that, because there's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. There's 14 flowers, which means in the 2 weeks since I was on before, I did 3 things a day. So, on average, 3 things a day. So I'm feeling pretty good about that. Now, remember that the flowers were also made into pairs, so there were fewer seams to complete the actual flower as well, which helps. So anyway, so that's what's going on with that. This is the block for this month. We talked about this last time. I haven't gotten any questions or anybody who said I needed to make any alterations to the handout, so hopefully it all makes sense. Just so you know, with the block of the month, if you are not doing this along with us, let's say you're watching this a year from now, this is 2024, and you have questions, you can always email me. The email's mail@StashBlasterQuilts.com, or you can put a comment. Now, until I wind up with a huge number of you, I will be responding to comments. Right now, not a problem. So, I would recommend that you just go ahead, shoot me an email, and I will do my best to clarify it. And then whenever I fix something, if there's a mistake, then I upload it again with the corrected information, so that people afterwards will have the corrected version. So that's where we stand with that. Let me see what else. Good news. Scott's last chemo, here's open, is going to be on Monday, which should start opening up my days a little bit. So that will be good. I finished the book I was working on, and I'm mostly done with the second book that I wanted to complete this year. So the first book, which is a therapist supplement to my most recent book on hoarding, has been given to Scott, and so when he feels up to it, He's going through doing the last edits for like grammar and punctuation and that kind of stuff, and all the formatting, so that we can get it to Amazon and get it uploaded, which can take 2 weeks all on its own, and get that all through that system and make that one ready. And then I'm hoping by the end of this month or next month, well, by the end of this month, to be done writing the professional organizer supplement, because I already had a bunch of it done, and get it out to the people who are going to review it and make suggestions for edits, so that by the end of next month, hopefully, that book goes for Scott. And so I'll be able to have it available when I'm hoping to have it available for the various conventions and things I'm going to. So we've got positive progress on the books. Once the books are done, then I'm going to take some sewing time. And I'm going to be doing a bunch of this stuff so that I'm prepped for you guys for the rest of the year, for the blocks of the month, get all the stuff written up, etc. But right now things are kind of sketchy, honestly. So I still haven't gotten next month's instructions written, although I'd hope to do that in the last 2 weeks. The block is done, but the instructions aren't done yet. It shouldn't be too bad though, so that'll be good. But as we go in the course of the year, we're going more and more complex. So this was block 1 and 2. 3 was more complex. This is 4. And by the time we get to 9 is going to take some time. It's not hard, but it's a little bit more finicky. So that's what's going on with that. So I think all in all, I have not yet spoken to the newly engaged couple to find out, what they're interested in for their quilt. But I already warned them that I have a year to give it to them, so they should not be expecting anything right away. Because the tradition is that you have a year from the wedding to give a wedding gift. So since this quilt's going to be a wedding gift, that'll be really nice for me to be able to do it within the year. But anyway, right now all I'm doing is I'm trying to pull fabric for the sewing that I'm going to be doing with you. I'm doing a surrounded 4-patch. I'm sure it has a name. I don't remember what it's called. I didn't have the time to look it up. So you're getting what you're getting. At this point, the idea is we got these fabric swatches. You can see these here, these dot fabrics. For free at the Guild. Wait a minute, I'm pulling the wrong color. I'm pulling the opposite. And years and years ago, and I made a whole ton of 4-patches like these. These were the leftovers when I finished the quilt I was making. Because a lot of people said, I don't know what to do, and so I said, well, what about something like this? And they said, that's great, would you mind doing it for me? So I can't tell you how many baby quilts I made out of those. But these are the leftovers, and so they've just been sitting around in my 4-patch drawer. And I said, you know what, it's time to come up with something else. It would help if I was still paying attention to what I was doing better. So I'm trying to find fabrics that are relatively bright and that there's enough of it. Because my 12.5 inches that go into my drawer are not is not enough to do what I want to do with this. So I want to make sure that I've got enough of it, because a lot of these are one-offs at this point. I cut bigger pieces out, and then I got down to 1.5. Because if I had room for 2, I'd have cut a 3. You know what I mean? So there's not a whole lot of excess here in terms of extra strips of something. And so what I'm looking for is I want bright colors. That's going to be iffy, but I'll measure it. Oh, that's a good one. But maybe not enough. Because the center blocks are going to be so bright, I want bright colors with it. So that's all I'm doing right now is I'm going through stacks and stacks of 1.5-inch strips. I have 2 drawers this size, right? So I have room for 5 rows across. Nope, 6. No, 5 rows across. And so I'm just pulling out a stack, and right now I'm looking for orange and red. I'm accepting pink as well to go with the fabrics that I have here. Let me see what else. I don't remember. Okay, so right now I'm just pulling these fabrics for the fun of it. But I do want something bright. So, like, I've got this really nice bright green here, and so I'm debating. Nope, there's not enough of it. Because I've been using complementary colors, right? So each green 4-patch is getting a red or a intense pink. Blue is getting orange is getting blue, that kind of stuff. So that they'll look good within within itself, each one within itself. I think I may actually just do yellow with my browns. But I do have these brown ones that I'm not really sure what I want to do with, so I'm just kind of playing around with that just a little bit. Alright. So... Alright. Let's do... Alright, so I have 3 blues. Now, the reason that I'm going through this now is I am going to chain piece these. I did have somebody ask me about chain piecing in email, and whether it was really worth it. And actually, there was somebody else. I think it was during my my bee. Somebody was talking about chain piecing, and is it actually worth doing? And at least for me, I have found that chain piecing is the way to go. Life gets a lot easier when you chain piece. That's a weird looking thing. Let's not do too weird. I have one more brown here I need to find something for. So... And I don't want to do something, really Christmassy or... Alright, that's a little weird, but it's also dotted, so it could be kind of fun. Okay. Now, because this is a charm quilt, and because it's going to have a whole lot of pieces to it, it does not need to be perfect. And what's really nice about this kind of a quilt is... I'm going to assemble it like courthouse steps. I'm going to sew the 2 short sides on, then the 2 long sides. And what that means is when I'm putting the quilt together, all I have to do is trim up the new block and then alternate which way those long pieces go, so I don't have any seams to match. This whole thing is going to be done without any matching seams other than doing the 4-patch. So if you get concerned about putting patches together as you get things done, if you think about your layout, you can be prepared for that and then just let it rip. Now, there is a thing to consider with this type of a quilt, because I do have lights and darks like this. Technically, okay, I should lay these all out on the wall first, and I should pre-cut my strip sets and everything to determine which way the blocks are going to go on the wall, so I have them turned the right way for how the seams are going to go. But for those of you that have been around with me for quite a while, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. I will put them on the wall, and if I don't like which way it's going, I will either rotate the block, I will put it somewhere else in the quilt, or it will get set aside and there'll be another quilt that's going to use this block. where I might pay attention if it's going to be the last one, but probably not. Um, I crank out so many quilts so fast that stuff doesn't tend to sit around for too long. And when it's a project like this just for myself, I really don't care if it gets rotated the wrong way. Um, so I'll worry about that at the end. But if it is something that would concern you, because you're going to have the seams if you don't want to have to worry about matching them, just go ahead, lay it all out. You can do, your barn raising type of diagonals if you want to. You can get as funky as you want to with it. I'm probably not going to lay out any sort of a pattern for the lights and darks. I'm just going to let them go however they want to go. This is not a quilt that has a purpose. This is not a wedding quilt. This is not, a big event kind of a thing. This quilt is being done so I have something to work on for fun. So I can do it however I want. Alright, well, now that I've said all of that, I turned off my machine without thinking. Alright, which means it's going to complain, but that's alright. Okay, so what I've done, let me move my camera first, and then switch over. Oh, you can see, look at that. Hot diggity. I'm going to move you down just a little bit more. Is I just took the squares and the strips and I've stacked them up. Now, one thing to keep in mind with this is I haven't trimmed these blocks. They've just sewn together. They're pretty close. They're about 3 inches. I'm going to put these on, but I am going to be trimming and squaring up these blocks when I'm done. So if they're not perfect, it's fine. I could trim them now and then square up again, and then square up again, and square up again. But again, this is a knock-around quilt. The nice thing about this is, let's say I also wanted to put in some squares like this, but that are smaller. Let's say they were only 1-inch blocks. They're half the size, right? Like so. So my 4 patches are this big, right? I could either put additional rows of sashing around or a fat sashing, and that would add some other contrast in my quilt, and maybe put those on a diagonal or do something interesting with those. So as long as the final block size is the same, regardless of how wide my sashing is, it works. And it's fine. So, like I said, I could have taken the time and worried about squaring all these up, but I'm not going to today because I am going to square up this block when it's completely done. Okay. So, actually, somebody asked me last time if I was using my walking foot, and I was. But I don't want to use my walking foot today. I want to switch back to my regular foot. So, you can watch if you want to. There we go. I'm going to unscrew this thing right here. Take off my walking foot. I have this nice little box that holds all of my feet. It also has the original plate here. Oh, here we go. The one that I have on here is a single hole. So if you can see, let me see if I can zoom you in a little bit here. Nobody get car sick. I have 2 holes here. It's hard to tell with the thread. Okay, there's 2 holes. My needle goes down this one. Instead of this, where my needle would be in here, when it goes in here, there's a chance of it sucking down more of the thread, more of the fabric that you're working with compared to just the singular hole. So I like having this plate in most of the time. You have to have this one when you're doing a zigzag because it has to go back and forth in this notch right here, that horizontal slice. That's where the needle goes for the zigzag. Okay? So that just kind of sits on top. But this is the foot I like the best. So I'm going to go ahead and put away my walking foot. Unfortunately, I have a lot of feet in that box. It's going to take a little bit of finagling, and I'm not going to do that in front of you. I'm going to pop this on. Well, screw it on anyway. Normally, I would have had all of this done before we started, but like I said, it's been a heck of a couple weeks. This is my leader and ender. Now, because I've pulled the thread out in order to do this, it's not going to do its job exactly right. So by pushing it over like this, I will have the fabric on the back side where I want it, and the thread is coming over to here. It's not the world's best option, but it does work. Okay. So now all I have to do is line up my material and my strip. I like going needle down. This machine came with a leg lift for the needle down, but I'm not sure where it wound up because I never used it, and then everybody's been telling me how much they love theirs, so I am going to give it a shot. Alright. Now, because I'm going to have a strip for each block, I'm just going to rotate that. And then needle down. Oops, I almost put that in upside down. Right sides together. Now, could you pin this? Of course you could. Why do you put the strip on the bottom? I put the strip on the bottom because there's no seams to worry about. I know a lot of people like it on top. But I also know when I'm done. So when I'm sewing here, if the strip was on top, unless you pre-cut the strips, you won't necessarily know when you've come to the end of your block. So I like putting it here so I can see when I'm at the end. Hey Donna, glad to see you here. I know you normally can't be here, so you're more than welcome. Most of you that watch do watch it afterwards. I don't know if it's the time of day or what, but that is the norm. Alright. Okay. So I got an interesting email today. I told you that I was going to be going to Indianapolis and for a conference, and I was not going to be speaking. I was just going to have a table to sell my books. And got an email today. We bought the table for being an exhibitor yesterday. Got an email today asking me to speak. So I asked them, because usually when I speak they give me a free exhibitor table. They couldn't do that this time, but they are giving me a nice discount. So I'm perfectly fine with that. So that was kind of nice. And I do get to speak, which is my favorite thing. So that's going to work out well. I have had several of you who have asked me to go ahead and start doing like sew-alongs. And so while I'm looking into other platforms, I think what I may do is maybe just do some lives, and when I have the platforms, switch over then to like the Patreon or something like that. I'm not sure how well that will work, and I don't know if it will. The algorithm for YouTube can kill you on that, but it's not like there's a million of you anyway. Um, so if you are interested in that, I think I'm going to try to give that a try as soon as that next book is done. Um, and I'll have a couple of sewing days where I might do like a half of a day, and then go from there. Thank you, Judy. I like my spun seams too. Um, it certainly makes it lie a lot flatter than if they were just folded over. And because these parts are pressed over, let me move in closer here. Because these are pressed over, I can nest the seams together and I get a tighter fit on the front. That's how I get these nice crisp centers. There are times that we press open. So for example, on the block of the month, when you assemble, you're going to want to press the seams open, because otherwise the center is going to be way too bulky all in one spot. Whereas pressed open is going to spread it out a little bit. Oh, you know what? Some of you watching might not know what I mean, so hold on one second. Okay, let me grab the block. Okay. So, let's pull this up a little bit. So here's the block of the month, right? When I sewed the wedges together, I pressed towards the darker side. Here we go. Here we go. Okay, so I pressed these out. So these are folded, these are quilted, done the normal way. But when I put the wedges together, that I did by pressing it open, so that my center here, although it is bulkier than normal because all of these seams are coming together, it's not as bulky as if they were all laid over on their sides. So when you assemble your wedges, you'll want to press it open. But for most of the time, you're going to press it to the darker side. So like here, this is pressed to the darker side. That way it doesn't show through behind the lighter one. If I did a live quilt along for the block of the month, we could ask questions. Yes, you could. Okay, so what I could do, because normally I want to have these done to show you when we're going to be doing it for that month. I could still do that, and then maybe do, because like last time I did one of the wedges and I showed you how. Maybe if I did a second block, then we could kind of do it together, and so you could see how it went together to making the final block. That's something that I could definitely do as part of a quilt along kind of a thing. I don't see why not. Sure. I was thinking more like other projects and stuff that I'm doing. You could sew, I could sew, and then if you just want to talk to me about something, we could. But sure, I could try to figure out how to time that in, because I do want to show on the original live stream on the first Wednesday of the month the basic segments of the block to get people started, and then use the second one for anything more. But we could do that in the live stream instead. Yeah, we could do that. So, yeah, let's, if you've got suggestions or ideas, go ahead and share them. Either here or, again, email me at mail@StashBlasterQuilts.com. And then we can certainly work something out with that on what you want to see during those live sit and sews, basically. But I'm sure you'll be watching me do, things like the wedding quilt and some of the other quilts that I'm doing. The one thing I will not be doing for sure is any commissioned quilts. I do not do commissioned quilts. I don't show them. Let me rephrase. I do take commissions for quilts. But I don't show them because I don't necessarily want the person who's getting it to know that the whole world has seen it being made. And some people want to do some of the work, like maybe they'll have me piece the top, but they do the quilting, and they might not feel as comfortable if everybody knew that they hadn't actually pieced the top. So I don't tend to do anything with commission. You don't ever see them hanging up here. I always make sure I pull them down before I sew on camera. So those you won't see, but you might see me do some charity quilts or the wedding quilt or those kinds of things. Whatever challenges we've got going, if I'm doing that particular challenge. And like I said, the block of the month could be one of them. I'm hoping that this becomes something that becomes a regular feature. Maybe once a month or something, we do just a live sit and sew so that people can work on their projects and build this community. I would really love for this community to grow and people to share and all of that. You probably would like me to put this back, wouldn't you? So you can see what I'm doing instead of just looking at my face. Okay. Now I will say, if you're doing a lot of thread changes, strip piecing doesn't really help as much. Chain piecing. So if I wanted to match the thread of, let's say, the strip with each one of these, then you would want to do a whole block and then do the next whole block and then the next whole block. But because I'm not, I'm going to just go ahead and do it this way to make my life a little easier. This is a really long strip. So I'm just doing this with a simple white thread. Because this is so bright, I'm not concerned about it showing through or anything. Plus I sewed all of the 4 patches with white thread because I was doing 8 million of them. Yeah, there we go. If you were concerned, then you might want to look into like a light gray or even a medium gray. If you were doing all dark colors, you still wouldn't want to go with like all black because you could have some problems with the lights you are putting in, and you need lights. You can't do an all black and all dark quilt without it getting depressing. You need some pops of color. And so you don't want to have a problem with that, with it being too obvious when you're doing your sewing. Use a neutral thread when I piece, usually Orifil Dove or an off-white. Okay, so your Dove is the light gray, like I was talking about. I generally don't have brand loyalty on my threads. As long as it's the color I want, and it's a good quality thread, it could be really any of them for me. I even use Coates and Clark's, general thread, all-purpose threads. I know that there are some people out there that are very brand loyal, and that's fine. I just don't happen to be one of them. I do so much piecing where I'm piecing with white that I do a lot of mine with white thread. And that's what I was doing a lot of most recently. So on the blocks of the month, of course, I'm putting in yellow, but I often use white. But anything neutral is fine. The advantage to using a gray versus using a white or a black is when you're looking at the seam of a quilt, okay, there's a natural shadow cast there. So if you have something that isn't a bright white, unless I'm sewing with white, which I do a lot, like I said, the gray will be less visible. If you're doing something all shades of brown and you go with a cream, it'll be a little less visible as well. So it's definitely something to think about. Yes, I do the same thing as well. I will often piece scrappy quilts with my leftover stuff Right now I happen to have white in. Um, I will generally put a full bobbin of a neutral white, black, gray, tan, something like that in the bottom. And then I use up all of the other stuff on the top. So those little spools that come with mending kits, those are perfect. They're about a quarter of a bobbin's worth. And you can watch it starting to play out. So you'll know you're getting to the end. If you put partial bobbins underneath, I find that I will run out before I expect to, and then I will have sewn all of this stuff, and it's not really sewn together. It only has the top thread. And so then when it goes off the end of my table, I wind up having to pick everything back up and put them back in together. So that's your call how you want to handle that. But I tend to put the full spool in whenever I can. As those bobbins get really low, I spin them onto... spin, it sounds like I'm doing it mechanically. I have cards that I have used a pinking edge on, and I will wrap them around there because that's what I take when I travel. Because I'm doing handwork, I can use those little cards. And so it takes up a lot less space than a bobbin for the same amount of thread. It's a great way to use up all the leftovers. And then I get my bobbins back to spin for bigger projects. And because it's on cardstock, or even on cardboard, food boxes, I don't have to worry about metal detectors. So if I'm taking it through the airport, it's a nice way to have a nice variety of color without having bobbins, because some of my machines use metal bobbins and some use the plastic. So I don't have to think about it. The cards go in and I'm done. It's also nicer because I can have so many more color choices in a smaller amount of space. So there we go. I kind of like this one. This is a I don't even know when I got this. They're little hearts, but they're surrounded with dots. Each of the hearts is. Let me see if I can get it. There we go. Which kind of goes with the theme. And then there's a modeled background that kind of looks like dots. So next to the purple, the yellow looks really cool. I had somebody ask me why I cut so many scraps into so many sizes. Because I cut 1 inch raw up to 12.5 inches wide. No, sorry, 6.5. I used to do 12.5. I do 6.5 now on strips. And then I do squares 1 inch raw to 12.5 inches. And it's because for like projects like this, I like having a variety of options available to me without wasting fabric. I am very much a cheapskate. You know this, those of you that have been around a while. And I like using up every inch because, if you pay for it, you should use it. And so I'll use every inch of fabric that I have in some way or another. So even stuff that's less than an inch wide, I save that as well. And then I do chip blocks out of those. And I was doing those before Bonnie Hunter was. But what I like to do is take the chip blocks and I will substitute those in for a bigger piece in another block. So for example, on the block of the month, you could have made chip blocks for your various points, or even for the background. You could make scrappy background pieces and then cut them out and put them into the block. It would work perfectly well and would add a lot more interest to it. So I like having that ability, but I don't want to do a lot of money for it. So I do it out of the little scripts and the scraps and crumbles and stuff that's left. And it's kind of neat when you've got flying geese and all the geese are multicolored. I did a quilt for somebody that way, and it was gorgeous. I'll be honest with you, and I don't mean to sound like a bragger, Um, but it was really neat because there were red birds and blue birds and green birds and ones with lots of different colors in them and things like that because of the scrapping that I did inside to make the center of the flying geese. So as they flew around the design, you got to see all kinds of different ones, and so that was a neat way to do it. It does take time. So like when I was mentioning at the beginning to plan your time, if I know that I want to do, let's say, the 4 square method of making flying geese, I know what size large square I need to start with. It's going to take you time to make that center block to be then cut up and put into your flying geese. So that's something to keep in mind. Also, since you know where your cut lines are going to be, you don't want a whole bunch of seams intersecting where you're going to be sewing. So if you pre-think it, you have a whole lot less of a fight when it comes to the sewing time. So there's all kinds of tricks and stuff to do that. I don't know that you guys want to get into that here, but all I have to do is take a piece of old phone book using Bonnie Hunter's method, or a piece of copy paper for that matter, the correct size so that I know that I've got it completely covered, and then I can go ahead, trim it up, and make my flying geese, and then they're all different, which is fun. So, just as a thought. Just making sure there wasn't anything new. I do finally have this set up where I can see the chat while I'm working, which is nice. The only time I can't is when I do like a PowerPoint where I talk about architecture for quilting ideas. When it's an actual PowerPoint, I can't see anything in the chat. So it's nice to be able to do that, but it's also a little bit of a pain in the tushy. Because I never know how it's going, which is why that one PowerPoint I didn't know it hadn't advanced. So, it works one way or another. One of the things that I need to do once I'm done with the book I'm on now, is to learn more about how to do stuff on live stream and Zoom and all of that, so that I can be doing a better job. I do lectures all the time, but they're the PowerPoint thing, and then I have to wait and then exit the program in order to see the chat, or I have to have another whole thing set up, like a phone or a pad or something, so I can be doing things, and it gets a little cumbersome. Switch it back to camera 3. Sorry about that. Sometimes I forget. This is the last one. Now, like I said, if you wanted to cut these in advance, your strips and everything, then you wouldn't have to worry about it, ouch, in terms of which was on top, the strip or the block. It's only because of how I'm doing it that I have to worry. Alright, I have an ender here. Now this particular one I'm going to undersew in terms of the seam allowance. This is going to be a very small seam allowance, but it's the only way that this is going to give me enough show of color to be worth having sewn it together. even with the smaller seam, I'm still going to spin the center. Alright, so since that's my ender, I'll just trim here. And I have turned my iron back on because, as always, it turns off. I know that's a safety feature, but sometimes I just wish when you put on an iron, you could put on a keep me on button or something, so it would stay at temperature the whole time. This whole thing of where, excuse me, I have to keep restarting it, really starts to annoy me after a while. Which is why when I'm production quilting, let's say I'm doing 40 charity quilts, I will sew a whole bunch of stuff together, and then I take it downstairs, and while I'm watching TV with Scott, I press it on the 2x6 foot ironing board I made, because my iron just stays on because I'm constantly using it. So that makes it a lot easier. But up here I only have this little table that's a kitchen folding side table kind of thing that I use up here, and it's not the same. Now because I did chain piece all of that, all of these are going to get sewn all at once, so I will at least save time on that. Now I did sew this 4-patch. This was my leader and ender. So because we talked a little bit about spinning seams earlier, I thought that I would demo again how to do this. Hold on, what's this on say? The first time you introduce the block of the month, the second time we see you in the month, we could do a sew along with the block of the month. We certainly could. We could do that during the this session. It'd be better if we could talk during the block of the month. Yeah, we could do the second one, the second Wednesday of the month as a sew along for the block of the month. But since most people watch after, there's a lot of people who wouldn't be able to interact, but they would be able to see the chat. So I suppose that would work. And if people had questions and sent them to me in advance, so let's say you watched the introduction one and you had questions and you can't come to the second one, you could send me the questions and then I could talk about it during the second one and you'd get your answer, you'd get it later. So that would be an option. Let's consider that. Something like, I don't know if there's anything, if we did something like Zoom, you could actually say, hey Maria, and ask your question versus writing it. Most of the stuff I'm seeing for live streaming like this, though, doesn't tend to work that way. So I will think about it. You think about it too. If you can figure out a way that we could actually do it more live, like when I'm teaching a class on Zoom, I can do that. But then it wouldn't be on the live stream. So we'd have to figure out what to do with that. But give it some thought. I will give it some thought. And if we come up with a good answer, then we'll have a good answer, which is always a good thing. Okay. So I'm turning off my machine. I'm switching back to camera 3. Okay, so here is my 4-patch. Okay, I took my original pairs and I pressed it to the dark. Then I nested my seams and I sewed here. Okay, now if I went and pressed it all to one side, there would be a big hump right here. Okay, because all of these layers would all be on this one side. If I take my seam and gently pull in opposite directions, it opens up a little bit. Okay? And then I can just kind of hold it like this. and then I will press these seams like so. So let me come over here. Okay. Now I'm going to put it down because I want to kind of finger press this a little bit. And then I will press. Okay. I'm just going to give it another couple of seconds because while warm, it's not as hot as I would like. Okay. And now you can see that center seam is spun. Okay. So this is much less bulky, which is why I recommend it when you do this. However, something to keep in mind is that when you press this, the flaps are going to spin either clockwise or counterclockwise. If you attempt to attach this to another four-patch that is spinning the opposite direction, you're going to wind up with that bulk all on one side again. So once they are pressed, sewn together, then you're probably best off pressing that seam open. So it's still not all on one side, but it's still going to be heavy on the one direction. So when possible, I try to make sure that I sew the four patches all the same way so that when I pull them out of my drawer over here, I have them prepared to all nest nicely when I'm putting the four patches together. With what I'm doing here today, that's not going to matter because the pieces going around, some are going to go this way, some are going to go this way in terms of the seams, and I just need to make sure that I'm putting the seams the opposite directions and we're good. But that's the spun seams, spun intersections. Now obviously on the stuff I just sewed, that's not a problem because I'm just sewing the strip onto the side. There's no seams to match, there's nothing to spin. So I'm just going to give all of these a quick press. I'm sure that we won't be done. In fact, I'm not even going to have one of these done before we're done today. We've only got a couple minutes left. But this is a project that I'm hoping to leave up and kind of putter on over the next couple of weeks. Like I said, Scott has chemo again on Monday. So life is going to get weird again, but I'm hoping to get at least a little bit of sewing time in. So thank you all for coming. Those of you that have hung out and chatted with me, thank you, thank you, thank you. If this is your first time, thanks for coming. I'm here the first and third Wednesday of every month from 7 to 8 o'clock Eastern Time. And again, any questions or problems, email me at this email address or leave a comment on the video. And then I will see you again next time with the next block of the month. So you'll have something new to try next time. Have a wonderful week, and I will see you soon. Thanks. Bye-bye.